let's talk about comedy, because your film, The Last Laugh, is about humor, about comedy, about the rules of comedy, about the taboos of comedy, about the responsibility and the possibilities of comedy. And that also applies for a feature film. If you make a comedy about any subject, you have to be conscious about comedy rules, how does comedy function, and as I said, about the responsibility and about the possibilities of comedy. If you take, for example, Sinatra-esque crooner and combine him with his punk rocker daughter, that's the stuff of comedy. If you combine an actor like Christopher Walken with an actress like Amber Heard, there's also potential for comedy in that. So, Bob, let's start with you, and one more time. How did you go about to write the script, and how did you, or did you follow any rules, any of these rules I was talking about?
Well, thank you for coming, everybody. I wrote it without any real intentions, even of showing it to anybody. It's very different than the things that I usually do, which are more political, like Land of the Blind, or historical, or espionage stories that I'm hired to write. This was just an idea I had about the dynamic in a family like that, with this egotistical performer father. And I wrote it when I had some spare time. Fern was away on a shoot, just as an exercise to write it because I was interested in it. And so I consciously didn't follow the usual rules of comedy or screenwriting. I just wrote long scenes and let the characters blather on and on as people do in real life, and didn't pay attention to how long the page count was or anything, and didn't intend to have a typical 3-act structure or follow any of those sort of rules. And it was very enjoyable to write something that way with no expectations or restrictions. Then later, when people read it and liked it, and we got serious about making it, of course, some of those long scenes had to be cut down. But it was an unusual project in that it's probably the one that I've written that was the least bound by those kind of rules.
But the ingredients were there. I'm sure
Yes.
that they were there from the beginning, like the father and the daughter, and the crooner and the punk rocker.
Yeah, well, there's an inherent conflict and drama, which is this man who's famous but not as famous as he wishes he was, and bitter that he didn't achieve the acclaim that he thought, and whose entire body of work is supposed to be this great romantic music. And of course, I was thinking of people like Sinatra, Tony Bennett, those kind of crooners, but who in real life was a terrible person to be in a relationship with. Romantic relationship, a family relationship, just a difficult, narcissistic guy. And so the relationship between a character like that and his family members is inherently dramatic, but also has ingredients of comedy in it.
So how did you get those actors? Like, top-notch cast. Not only Christopher Walken and Amber Heard, but also all the others, which seem handpicked and are all wonderful and marvelous.
We're very lucky to have that cast. I felt very fortunate. I didn't write with any actors in mind, but when we got serious about making the movie, it became clear that we needed an actor to play that part, the Paul Lombard, the singer, who was very charismatic and charming, because on the page he can be quite harsh. And without that charm, he instantly becomes alienating. So Christopher Walken came to mind very early on, and he brings that charm and charisma in spades. In fact, as I've mentioned last night, we had the opposite problem. Once he was in the part, he was so charming and so charismatic, even when he's doing really unpleasant things and being a bastard to his children, that the conflict was out of whack. When we showed early cuts of the film to friends and filmmakers who we trust, they said, "Oh, he's so wonderful, he's so charming." I said, "Yeah, but don't you think he's mean to his daughters?" "No, they're brats. He's really great." So, oh my God, now we have a problem. We have to fix the movie. We have to adjust the dynamics so the playing field is more level between them.
I mean, it was more even that they wouldn't just say that about him, but they would complain about the other characters. Like, oh, she's so annoying. She's always complaining. She's always this. And it was justifiable complaining, but
yeah, so we had to change the balance a little bit there. But we were lucky to get, Christopher came on and Amber came on, and then on the strength of them, we got this great supporting cast: Oliver Platt, Ann Magnuson, Hamish Linklater, Kelly Garner. They were all, total pros, and because we didn't have a lot of rehearsal time, I'm very indebted to their natural talents.
So, Fern, you also produced or co-produced the producer of One More Time. So in between him just starting writing without following any rules and just to pass his time and actually being on the set and first day of shooting, how did you manage to get that on the road, get that going?
You mean how?
How did you find the necessary funds to produce his script?
Well, we should clarify. Bob and I are creative producer partners. So we are, luckily or not luckily, the ones that aren't bringing the money in. So I'm not standing over his shoulder and saying, you got 5 minutes left, get it. I'm the one that's saying, you know what, you really need this. Screw those other producers. So we're like, as Bob put it earlier, I'm like a second set of eyes for him. I watch on the monitor while he doesn't necessarily watch on the monitor. He's just working with the actors, watching them. So it's more like, I've got his back, and when it's the other way around, same, he's got my back.
I'm sure you didn't put your own money into it, but how did you find the money to produce?
Well,
we had some other producers called Parts and Labor who are based in Brooklyn, Lars Knudsen and Jay Van Hoy, and they're very adept at making movies for low budget. I mean, one of the things about this movie is that it probably looks more expensive than it is. We had very little money, but we had a crew who really knew how to stretch a dollar. The DP, the art department, the costume department, everybody was very, very resourceful. And so I think we made it look more expensive than it was. But Jay and Lars put the financing together. Part of it came from K5 here in Munich. Part of it came from other investors in the U.S. and Korea. But, all independent films are difficult to finance.
And I would just love to add that one of the hardest things in his film to make it not look cheap was, here was a guy that was supposed to have had all this money, and we did not have money to rent a house in the Hamptons that could really do that. It wasn't easy, and we finally were able to find a house that superficially looked like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really looks like an expensive house, but it's if you really look back beyond the set, it's really a one-room space that we were able to make it look good, and we we got furniture from different people, and we did stuff. So we had to think very creatively, because that's where it would have given away, because the houses that we could afford did not look like a house that Paul Lombard would have lived in.
So, and then you needed to create his musical past. So you needed songs, you needed all of that. So how was that done?
Well, a crooner in that sort of pre-rock and roll idiom made sense for the story, but that's not my kind of music, and I'm not an expert on that at all. So I wrote the lyrics that are the main song in the film. They were built into the script, and they're germane to the plot. And then we hired a composer named Joe McGinty, great band leader in New York, who wrote the music for that, and then he and I collaborated on some of the other songs. We had to write a song that was an early track from the fictional Paul Lombard's discography. We needed a voice for that who could pass for the young Paul Lombard. And then there's some other music as well. But some of the heavy lifting was done by his album covers. We had the art department make this whole discography of his checkered career, from being a young boy singer with a big band to his ill-advised forays into reggae and psychedelia and folk and everything, hip-hop. And then his later albums as well. And that scene where you see the albums on the wall, I think, sort of tells his history in a very quick, economical way.
I'm sure that Chris Walken got a kick out of that.
I'm not sure he realized that, to be honest with you. But we wanted to take advantage of the fact that he's a person who's been in the public eye for 40 years or more than that. So there was a rich trove of photographic evidence, and also that video clip of him singing, which is about 25 years old. We wanted to use that to our advantage in the film.
But because he's had this long, rich history, we were able to find these incredible photos that really, helped track the past. And I don't know if you want to give away the secret, speaking of finances, of how we made that scene really.
No, I can't. It's like asking a lady her age. I'm not going to give away those secrets.
Okay, not going to give away a secret. But that's why we were here.
And of course, Chris Walken has a past as a step dancer, and
yeah, we knew he'd grown up in Broadway as a chorus boy, singing and dancing. So I knew he had that skill set. Amber, on the other hand, was very honest when we first met. She loved the script and was clear she understood the character. But she said, I'm a fan, a great music fan, but I have never sung, not even in the shower, which I found hard to believe. But she said, I'll take vocal lessons and work my ass off if you're willing to take a chance with me. And I did. And so it was very brave of her, with no musical training or experience, to get up and sing, just to be on set in front of all the extras and sing live was very bold.
Mm-hmm. So how do you work together? You share credits on both of these films. So and these films are, as I pointed out, one's a comedy, the other is a documentary about humor and comedy comedy as a taboo subject. How do you work together? How do you cooperate?
Well, I'm going to take the first part of this, but both films.
There you see it right there.
Both films have comedy, it's true, but they also have a very serious, dramatic part to them as well. So we have a very similar sensibility. We met because I was a working cinematographer and he hired me to shoot a film. So we already knew from day one we could work together, and we were very interested in the same sorts of projects. But Bob was very smart in the beginning because I love to collaborate. I started as a documentary still photographer, and one of the reasons I went into documentary film is because I wanted the feeling of collaborating with other people. So he was very smart in the beginning, and he said, let's draw a line. One of us will always be the director, and we'll work together, we'll be partners. And it was the smartest thing because we have very similar sensibilities but different ideas of projects, and we come at it very differently and very complementary, but it gets hard, as it would for any two people, if you're equal roles. Mm-hmm. Like, we tried editing together because we were both editors, and our very first of 4 films together, we edited together. It had its, moments. We still, got married in the midst of it, so it wasn't that bad, but it had its moments. And then the second feature, we decided, okay, we're going to edit together, but in separate rooms, which was great because there are certain scenes I know how to attack, and there are certain scenes he knows how to attack, and it would be great, and we'd send it through the ether. And then it got to the point where we were at a fine cut stage, and we kept changing it back the way we had it and sending it. And it was not, we realized we weren't advancing. The project wasn't going to get finished if we kept doing that. And for the end of that, we had to work together again, which had its moments again. And then the next 2 features we did not edit together.
Even in that one, when we were editing together, although we were editors together, I was the director. So in the end, if we disagreed, there was a veto. And on Sumo, her first film, which we edited together, she had the veto. Mm-hmm. But I will say, on Land of the Blind, there was one time in particular, we were fighting over some cut neither of us can even remember anymore. Neither of us can remember it. And we strongly disagreed, and we argued for hours, and finally she said, okay, fine, I'm done arguing with you as the editor, now I'm going to argue with you as your wife. And she argued with me for 3 more hours, which I thought was really dirty pool.
And I won.
But yeah, having a final vote. We did write a script together, And that was much more difficult because
Yeah, it
there
was
was,
like
it was
co-directing.
too equal. There was no final say on the things that we disagreed about.
Yeah, that was.
It's interesting because we have the Coen brothers, and we have so many brothers who share writing and directing credits. But can you think of a husband and wife?
Well,
team?
there's some. Nancy Myers and Charles Schreiber, they got divorced. So Barry Levinson and his wife,
They got
Valerie Curtin,
divorced.
they got divorced.
Yeah, but
it's
did they
hard.
ever
You mean ones that stay
share
together?
directors credits?
There's
don't
a
think so.
few, like, I'm blanking on their
The
name now.
American,
The folks who made Little Miss Sunshine.
and American
Dayton
Splendor, is
Ferris.
that the same couple or a different couple?
That's a different couple. There's a few.
yeah.
I mean, God bless them. I just think it's very
But
hard.
you know, but maybe they've gone on to have separate directing careers since. You know, I mean, it really works for us because we can be a team as opposed to, you know, fighting over the same thing. And we're lucky because, like I said, our ideas for what we want an idea for a film are not the same. So.
Well, when on Fern's film, like The Last Laugh, I felt my role was to support her vision of it, and she had a very clear vision of what she wanted to do. And so I might have disagreed and argued my point, but in the end, it's not mine. I want her to realize her vision, and so I want to support that.
Right. So we can be very supportive, and I felt the same way when I would sit in the monitor and see that Christopher Walken wanted to do it a different way, and it wasn't the same point. And I know how important it was to Bob. It was like, I'm the mama bear then. Like, you know, how can we make this happen? So, so it works in that way.
But no good cop, bad cop routine.
It's more about the dynamic between us. I mean, on a fiction film, only one person can talk to the actors. You know, that doesn't always happen, but it's a recipe for disaster when more than one person gives notes. But we would talk to each other.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because I could do a little bad cop to the producers because I was sitting with them. They saw how I was, you know, they also saw that I wasn't, you know, being a diva about it or helping him be one, you know. So that then when I could go to them about stuff, and it was the same if I saw something on the actual set, I could go to him and he would be the voice. But, you know, again, you have to learn from what works and what doesn't work. On the very first, you know, on Land of the Blind, you know, it was Bob's first directing job. He was working with very serious actors, and he wanted to make sure that it didn't look like the wife was, you know, whispering what to do. So I had to, you know, so we got very good at knowing when, you know, okay, this is you cannot move to the next scene unless you do this. And we got to know when I had to really get the point through or not.
Well,
and it was very
on the
respectful.
documentaries, Fern shoots them, but for the interviews, she asks the questions. She does the interviewing and usually sits next to the lens, and then our friend Ann Etheridge usually operates the camera, and I sit behind both of them where no one can see me.
In total darkness.
Yeah, and I listen to it, and sometimes I'll have an idea for a question, but it's a balancing act because I'm not going to jump in and step on her. So you kind of have to know through instinct and experience when the right moment is to chime in so that you're not overstepping.
Yeah, so like when we would change magazines because we were shooting in film, we'd confer because it takes a few minutes to do that. That was great. Or sometimes if I knew it was a subject Bob knew better than me or was something more interesting to him, I would, you know, like bounce it back to him.